hashtags in the description. That helps too.
Well, here we are. It's another
Hello.
episode. It's another night.
We have arrived.
It is hot in my room, but it's nothing I can do about it now.
Oh, it's okay. I thought something catastrophic happened.
No, we're good. Oh no, my drink. Hold up. All right, I'm good. I am Bone Shackles.
I am Daddy D Rock.
And this is Maple Butter and Caramel. This is a film podcast. We talk about movies and shows. Our first
That
three
we do.
episodes, we did some tier listing, but we are not a tier listing channel. That's not
We're
what
not
we
doing
are.
that tonight. We're not doing that
Unacceptable.
tonight. Every now and again, it's a fun thing as an aside, but yeah, I don't want to be a tier listing channel either. So, because that does get old.
Any like specific shtick is just boring.
Yeah, mix it up. Mix it up.
So what have you been up to?
I've been playing a lot of Pokemon Legends Arceus.
Oh, you're another
It's
one of
very
those.
addicting. It's very addicting. I've not bought a Pokemon game in many years because I thought the franchise has gotten pretty stale. I bought Pokemon Snap, which was really fun, the new one. But yeah, the mainline games didn't interest me. They got stale, and then this new one came out. I was like, yeah, I'll give it a chance, and it's surprisingly good. Visually, it's kind of whatever, but the gameplay loop is incredibly fun, incredibly addicting. It's really open, really explorative. Just all those good feelings of adventure, childlike wonder, all that is there. I have good things to say about it, so that's kind of what I've been up to. What about
I've
you?
not been into Pokemon in a long time because every Pokemon game is the same for 25
This
years.
This is the one that's finally mixed it up. It's you should give it a chance.
I
You
don't
really
want
should.
to. I don't want to be an echo chamber, but I just have to agree that the graphics are bad, and when
Yeah,
when the game's that ugly, I have trouble in really enjoying it.
it looks better in person on a TV for sure.
Okay.
And it actually looks really good in handheld. It looks really good on the OLED and handheld. It looks better in person. It
It's
doesn't
a game I'll
look
get
amazing.
on sale.
Yeah, that's fair, but it's fun. I had a GameStop gift card from Christmas, and I had like $10 in rewards points, so I paid like
All
20
right.
bucks for the game. So I've been getting my money's worth. Beyond that, I've been watching Book of Boba Fett. The new episode I think made some waves online. A lot of people talking about it. It's very good. I won't say why it's been making waves online. I'll just say it's an episode I did not expect. I don't think
I've
anyone
heard that.
expected it.
I don't care. The way Mando season 2 ended, I lost all interest in anything after Mando. I don't care. I
I've got
wish
mixed
that,
feelings on that ending.
I wish that I could care about Star Wars anymore, but I just uh,
I
it's been beaten to death.
we need to have a Star Wars episode where we discuss Star Wars, like where the franchise needs to go, what it's done poorly, what it's done well, and we can kind of dig into some
That'll
stuff.
be a long
That's
one, but yeah, maybe we'll do that next week.
yeah, because I agree. I want them to step away from the pre-established iconography and everything else. I want them to go in like a bold new uncharted direction, a la Pokemon. Um, but yeah, no, I agree. I'm kind of getting sick of all the fan service. As a fan, it's like I only need so much. It's like Red Letter Media says, it's like dangling a shiny object in front of a cat. It's like, I know that thing. That's getting old.
That's all Star Wars is right now.
Yeah, it's getting old. So no, I agree with you on that end for sure. And Star Wars will be kind of relevant to our discussion tonight, I think, tangentially so.
In s- Less from me on my side than you, I think, but we'll get into it later.
Yeah.
I have been watching the new season of Ozark.
Ah,
It's
how
the
was that? I've heard good
first-
things.
It's the first part of the final season. It it's very strange. It's extremely repetitive. It's like plot-wise identical to every season of Ozark is the same story, but they managed to like I guess every season of Ozark is like the same template, and then they managed to sprinkle in different things that make it each season like intense. And it's
see.
good. The character arcs are great. The acting, everything about it is good. Oh my god, you look horrifying right now.
Oh, to do that weird glitchy like
No, it's much
jumbly thing.
it's much creepier. I literally have to like refresh it, otherwise it's gonna like
I look forward to
genuinely
seeing that.
startle people. All right, it's good now. Um, each season of Ozark is like the same story, but
I see.
they're able to make it seem fresh somehow each season. And right now it's getting very intense. There's a lot of drama, and I'm very curious to see how it all ends. So it's good. I'm not done yet. It's gonna be split into two parts, each 7 episodes. Um, Other than that, I don't think I've watched anything. What have I watched?
I'm not watching much either. I've heard good things about Ozark. I know both my parents have been watching it. Some of my friends have been watching it.
The
One of my
first,
friends he
Go
compared it
ahead.
to Breaking Bad, but he said it's good, but not as good as Breaking Bad. But he
It's
said it's a
not
very
similar to
similar.
Breaking Bad at all.
I think he said it was like a similar formula as far as.
It isn't. It really is not.
Okay. Okay.
I can't
Interesting.
spoil anything, but it's not similar to Breaking Bad at all. The
Okay.
first season is okay. It's very dry and not very tense because it's just not really well edited and there isn't much music and it's just kind of dry. Season 2 onward is much better.
Okay.
Jason Bateman is excellent in it. Everyone is. It's really good acting.
I'll have to give it a chance at some point. I've heard good
Other
things.
other than that, I mean, February's mostly going to be games for me. Not much in the way
Yeah.
of movies or shows.
Same. We got
I
Elden
watched the
Ring coming out.
trailer. Ooh yeah, I watched the trailer for the Halo show. It looks terrible.
Yeah,
Um,
people have been kind of hyping it up. Like one of my friends
no,
texted
it
me
looks
about it. He was like,
terrible.
"Yeah," he's like, "It shows promise." I'm like, "It looks really cheap to me.
It looks
I don't
bad.
think this was the right
So
studio
literally
to
just
tackle this."
abandoning all the story and lore and characters. It's like a completely different story,
Oh, see,
and
I don't know anything about that. I just know that
it's not even close. They're changing everything. They're doing
it
just
looks
their own
cheap.
thing. It looks
It
cheap.
looks cheap. It doesn't look. It doesn't look. It reminds me of like the Cowboy Bebop Netflix series where it looks cheap. It
It
just like
looks
this isn't. It's not a property that I think can be done by a studio on the level of like Paramount.
no,
Um,
no.
Not
It needs first
maybe
of all,
like 20 years from now, but
Halo should not be a show. It should be a movie trilogy.
yeah, I
It should be
agree.
Halo 1, 2, 3, and it should be a big budget like Lord of the Rings.
I think you could do a Halo series if it doesn't necessarily center around Master Chief. If he's like a component of the story and you're kind of
Well, you could
exploring.
do like a show based on Halo Reach. You could do that. But
That
the
would be
main
cool.
trilogy of games should only be movies. It doesn't work as a show. It's not enough material.
I think, when we see what HBO does with the Last of Us series, provided it comes out well, then I would say maybe HBO was the right studio to tackle something like a Halo.
I don't think so
But
because I think if HBO did Halo, they would make it too gritty and too edgelordy, and it would be too violent. Like Halo is not R-rated material. It really isn't.
no,
The games
not
might be
really.
rated M, but if they were movies, they'd be PG-13 blockbusters.
Yeah, yeah, I agree.
And I feel like if HBO did it, they'd add too much melodrama, and they would try to
You know
make
what,
it too TV mature.
Just give it to Denis Villeneuve. Just let him do the. Just let him. Do the
Actually-
trilogy. Let him do it.
He wouldn't do a bad job.
He would
He's
do a
very
good
good
job.
at the big opulent sci-fi, and that's what Halo is. It's like very mystical and big. Originally, Peter Jackson was going to do the movie, and I
Yeah.
really wish that could have been made, and
Yeah,
it was never
got
going
stuck
to
in
happen.
development hell.
Yeah.
I think it ran into budgetary problems, which makes sense. I think this was like 10 years ago. If
Oh,
not,
it was-
I think it was over 10 years ago.
I think
And-
it was over 10. It was like
Yeah,
just
it was
after
like
Halo 3.
2009. Yeah, something like that. I think District 9, that was a lot of the stuff from District 9 was repurposed Halo, like the vehicles in that were repurposed Warthogs.
No, they wanted to. So after Peter Jackson wasn't able to make the movie, they wanted Neil Blomkamp to make it because of
Yeah.
the success of District 9.
Oh, I see.
Neil Blomkamp is a terrible choice for Halo. I don't know what they were thinking.
He's a good director, but yeah, I wouldn't pick him for that project either. You need someone with like who's used to dealing with something on a grand scope, like Peter Jackson.
Peter Jackson,
or-
Denis Villeneuve,
Yeah.
any of those guys who can do opulent, big sci-fi. And speaking of Denis Villeneuve,
Yeah.
we'll just go into Dune.
Yeah. Let's get into it.
I'm gonna let you start because I think we agreed on a lot, but I'm more interested in what we disagree on. And I'm not sure if we come from different backgrounds. I don't remember if you said you've read the books or not.
No,
Or
I
you're a
haven't.
fan. I've read the first book and I enjoyed the first book. But tell me what you thought of Dune as someone who's just not into the book.
See, I would say I was more intrigued than hyped because it's a
Hmm.
property that people have tried to adapt many times. You know, you had the David Lynch film, which is pretty
It's one of the
infamous.
hardest books to adapt. Most people
Yeah,
described it
it's
as
very dense.
unfilmable.
Yeah, I've heard that it's very dense. It's a little bit esoteric. I've not read the book, so I can't comment on that. But from what I know about the source material, it is very difficult to adapt, especially 30 years ago. Now we have the way the technology has progressed. You can actually do it justice, but not having that familiarity with the source material, I would say the the world that Denis Villeneuve was able to create or sort of capture, it feels so seamless and real and lived in. It doesn't
Hmm.
feel like you're watching a movie at times. I mean, you really feel like you're in that world. It's really captivating. It's really engaging. The effects are seamless. The CGI is almost unnoticeable because like I said, it's just so seamless
I
and
would
it just
describe it as
seems.
photorealistic. It's
Yeah, that's a really good
there's
way
no
to sum
seams
it
to
up.
this movie.
I heard one of my friends complained about like a single landing craft scene in the movie that didn't look good, and then I rewatched that scene. I was like, I don't know what you're talking about, man. It
I don't know
looks
what he's talking
fine.
about because I thought everything looked
Yeah, I
photorealistic.
I
Like,
think it's probably the best effects I've ever seen in a movie without hyperbole. It's that seamless and that
I
impressive. It's very
I
meticulous.
think Blade Runner 2049 beats it.
I haven't seen that, so I can't comment on it. But I really want to watch it because same director, sci-fi.
It's his best film, and it's maybe top five sci-fi films of all time.
It's near the top of my watch list. I've just not been watching a lot of movies lately, but it's like number 2 or 3 on my watch list. So
It's so good. No, but the effects in that I think are better,
I
but
see.
not by much. They're more interesting.
Hold on a second.
Uh oh,
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
For some reason, my computer, I said I see, and then my computer was like, "Oh yeah, you want something?" Siri turned on, and it started talking to me. I don't know why. Sorry.
No,
But
no worries.
back on track. Back on track. The effects. He's a master of visual effects. I think he is the best modern sci-fi director, and I think this film cements cements that kind of idea. Having no familiarity or very little familiarity with the source material, I knew about the worms. I knew about Arrakis. I knew some of the basic things that
Well,
everyone
I mean,
who's
it's a famous sci-fi book. You know, it's been around
yeah.
since it was '60s. So
And who was trying to adapt it? There was the guy who did the concept art for the original Alien. It was the guy who
so
did
the
Holy
guy,
Mountain,
the guy who what's his name?
Jodorowsky or something like that.
Yes, Shadowski. They
So
released a
that one
book of
movie,
like his plan for it, and it sounds insane,
yeah,
but it would have been terrible,
yeah,
but it was really interesting.
yeah, exactly. So there's kind of like a lore and mystique around just the idea of trying to adapt Dune, and I think I was intrigued by that premise, and I tried to keep my
So
expectations
this
in
is
check because I
sorry to interrupt you, but this is interesting. When I researched Alejandro Jodorowsky, I guess also so Dino De Laurentiis bought the rights to Dune in the '70s, and he tried to get Ridley Scott to
oh,
make it.
I've heard that before.
I feel like
I've heard
that
that
kind of
before.
would have worked.
It it
It
might
wouldn't
have.
have been as good as this, but it would have been a lot better than
No,
David Lynch's Dune.
I think the world, and maybe it's just the way it was presented, but I get the impression that this was a movie that was probably unadaptable until recently. I think
Because of effects technology.
because of effects
I
technology,
can agree with that.
and
Yeah.
not because Ridley Scott wouldn't be able to handle it conceptually, because he's an amazing, legendary sci-fi
I think you would
director. I
have to
think
change too
conceptually,
much just because of limitations.
yeah, yeah, and I don't think it would have worked. And at that time, I think you would have had an uphill battle trying to get the studio to release it in multiple parts. The first book, whereas Denis
Hmm.
Villeneuve, I think even he still had a pretty tough time
Oh,
convincing Warner
they had
Bros.
no
to do that.
guarantee of a part two. They had to
Yeah,
make a
yeah,
part one and hope that it sold.
because he wanted to film them all at the same time, a la Lord of the Rings and Peter Jackson,
Hmm.
and they said no. But I guess to kind of tie back into your question, what I thought of the movie, I thought it was excellent. I really did. It was one of the most immersive films I've ever seen. Probably the single most immersive sci-fi film I've ever seen. I watched it in IMAX, so that made a big difference.
That's the way to
And
watch it.
I mean, visually stunning movie. Um, the music is really unique. It's a really unique score. I think Hans Zimmer did this, didn't he?
Oh, yep, Hans Zimmer.
Yeah, it's really unique and it really adds to kind of the ambiance of that world. And I really don't have any major complaints. I have one complaint which we can kind of talk about later that I think you and I have discussed a little bit privately. But overall, it's an incredibly solid film. I'd say it's probably like a 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10 for me if I had to give it a ranking. But I think I'm really intrigued to see where that story goes going forward. And it definitely made me more interested in that world. I probably won't ever read the books really, but I am definitely invested, in future films, especially with Denis Villeneuve at the helm. So those are kind of my general overall thoughts.
Yeah, I agree. This is a masterpiece. It's an excellent film. It is this generation's Lord of the Rings. It is epic in scope. It's opulent. It's weighty. It has that kind of Peter Jackson like importance, and this is an epic.
Yeah,
And it has, in the same way Lord of the Rings did. You can tell that it's made by a group of people who are super passionate about the source material and passionate
absolutely.
about the movie they're making. And it really is this generation's Lord of the Rings. Like, again, this is why earlier we were like we're gonna bring up Star Wars, and I said I'm not. I don't think Dune is similar to Star Wars at all. I think it's much more
No,
similar to Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings trilogy, and I'm very excited to see where it goes, because, um, just as Peter Jackson's trilogy went, it got better and better. Because in my opinion, Return of the King is the best one, and I'm very excited to see part 2 and 3 of this because I think it's only going to get better. Because this movie
I
had
was
flaws. We can
yeah.
agree that it was
It's not
amazing,
perfect.
but my biggest flaw is for the first almost half of the film, I felt it very very difficult to feel any kind of emotional connection to the characters. I didn't really
For
care about any of
Paul,
them. I didn't care any of them. I just really didn't care until like maybe halfway or like the end of the first act, and then I really started to care. And then by the end, I was super into the characters. For some
I felt
reason, a good chunk of the film, it felt very difficult for me to give a crap. I don't know why. Like I was sitting there like, oh, the filmmaking's amazing, but I don't really feel anything.
I felt the exact same way, and it was something I was kind of cognizant of while I was watching it. And there were some characters that I did feel for, like Duncan Idaho,
Well, yeah,
and
he's
what was
great.
Josh Brolin? What was his character? I liked him.
He
I can't remember his
is.
name.
Why can't I remember that
That's
character?
kind of that's one issue with this movie, and I can't blame it on the movie. It's the source material, but the names of the characters are really difficult to remember. I only
Well,
remember a
some
few.
some aren't because they're great. Some are because they're
Yeah,
just kind of
just
okay.
weird. Yeah,
Like you have the
but I can't blame that on the
Harkonnens
film.
and House
Yeah,
Atreides and some really cool names in the Dune universe. But I know who he plays. Why can't I?
yeah, I can't remember the character's name. But I'll definitely agree with
Gurney
you.
Halleck.
Okay,
He's
yeah, I would
like
never
House
remember that.
Atreides is like right hand
He's
man.
like kind of like the King's Guard almost.
Yeah,
And I had the exact same feeling watching this. I didn't, and maybe that's one. I don't know if it's a complaint of the movie or the source material, but it doesn't really do a lot to make you care about House Atreides and their goals and their aims. They just
I
sort
think
of
the
seem like
only
another family vying for power in the grand scheme of things.
they do it. I think the one actor who does the best to make me care in the first act is Oscar Isaac. I think he's incredible in
Absolutely,
this movie.
I was thinking the same thing.
Leto Atreides is a really good person. He's a good leader and a good father, and this film shows that really well. They really adapted
Yeah,
him very well, because he is a good person, and he is paternal figure who's respected, um, and they did a very good job. And Oscar Isaac is just incredible in the part. He's very good.
yeah, I agree. It was in all the trailers, but he has that discussion with Paul, near the beginning of the film where Paul is kind of hesitant to sort of accept his inevitable role as replacing his father, and he says, what if I don't want to succeed you? What if I just want to live my own life? And he essentially gives him his blessing. He says, you're still my son. You know, you'll always be my son. That's kind of what's most important. So you see that he does care more about the happiness and the well-being of a son and less about power and succession. And he also has a deal with what was the name of the desert dwelling people?
The Freeman.
Yes, the Fremen. There's some sort of he basically meets with one of their leaders, one of their tribal leaders, and he says, "I'm not going to interfere with your way of life or try to usurp you. I'm not going to try to take away your lands or your heritage. Like I want you to live sovereign and free. And as long as I'm the ruler here, I'm going to allow you to do that. I'm not here to encroach on you." So you see that he definitely has a moral code, and that
Hmm. He's a very
he's
different
not
kind of
just
leader compared to the Harkonnens.
yeah 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 exactly. It's not all a power grab, and I absolutely agree with you that he's like the one kind of anchor for House Atreides that actually makes you care about their interest and makes you empathize with them. But as a whole, like I don't know if I clearly understood what their overall aim was or what their overall goal was, and I don't know that I cared about what their overall
That's
goal
so
was.
that's interesting to see what it's like for um, new people to watch this, because all the people I saw it with, my sister, my brother-in-law, they're all fans of the book. So I didn't have anybody's
Oh, I see.
perspective of people who are unfamiliar. So, um, if you say it was difficult to follow that, then I take your word for it, because I already know that.
Not not so much difficult to follow. It was more that it wasn't really well explained. I understood that they were there trying to profit off like the spice trade, but it was I would have liked more. Well, here's why we are trying to profit off of this. Here's why we're trying
See,
to
the thing is, they
become a
are gonna.
leading power.
The problem with Dune is it's very scientifically dense, and this movie did a smart thing of not explaining how spice works when it comes to space travel. All you have to know for the first movie is space travel is impossible without the spice. It's
Yeah,
oil. Um,
yeah.
if you want, I can explain to you how it works. If not, the reason why
That's
it'll get the movies will, because it becomes part of the plot. The
I see.
Navigators and the Navigator Guild. Um, but basically, the way it works is Arrakis is the source of spice, and spice is a hallucinogenic kind of compound. Basically, if you have enough of it, it can make you like see the future, kind of.
Yeah,
And if you're extra special, you're like Paul. You can see the future in space and time, and um, but the way it works is the God Emperor, controls all these planets, the Empire, and you have the houses. You have Atreides, Harkonnen, other houses, and Arrakis is really really important. It's Afghanistan with oil. It's everyone wants to own it, and originally, the the God Emperor gave Arrakis to the Harkonnens, and then he decided to have them leave, and he wanted House Atreides to run it. So House Atreides, their goal is they need to mine spice on Arrakis and make it profitable and make it work for the Empire. Otherwise, they don't get to stay. They're gonna get killed, probably by the Harkonnens who want their power back.
yeah. I see. I understood that from like I understood the
Their whole
politics of that.
motivation is the God Emperor has asked them to go to Arrakis, and
Yeah,
if they don't please him, it's not going to be good for them.
yeah. You're right. You're right. I do remember that now, and I guess it's worth noting. I wanted to rewatch this film before we talked about it. I just didn't have a chance to. It's a long
Unfortunately, I
movie.
didn't either, so I'm going off of
I'm going off of memory, and some things I am fuzzy on just because I don't remember. Probably things I understood better at the time or shortly
That's
after
the
seeing
problem
it that have
with
kind of
Dune is it's
faded.
really really dense.
It is, yeah, it is. But I would say that's another thing that the movie does pretty well is I didn't find myself too confused too often. I felt like I followed everything that was going on. I mean,
They were very
I,
smart to not give you all the info. Like some things, like just saying spice is for space travel. All right, that's it. And the audience
yeah,
is like, I get it. It's
you're
magic.
not
Whatever.
overwhelmed.
Who cares? Like
Yeah,
they didn't bore you and beat you down with details that you don't need to know.
yeah, I would agree. And I think taking something that is that dense and complicated and making it more accessible for a general audience is a feat in and of itself. And I think the fact that I think the movie succeeded in doing that. So
Hmm.
I think that's definitely one of the strengths of the movie because that's not an easy feat. Having to create something that simultaneously pleases fans but also is understandable to someone who's not familiar with the source material. That's a really tricky balance, and I think this movie. I mean, I can't speak on behalf of like the fans of the source material, but I
Here's the
would say it
deal.
does that pretty well.
I know many fans of the book, and I have not met a single one who didn't like this movie.
Well, there you go.
Every single one of them said this movie was exactly in my mind what I saw when I read the book.
Which is really cool.
It is.
Can't say
It's,
that for a lot of adaptations.
like I said, this is this generation's Lord of the Rings. It's made by passionate people who took this legendary source material and used their passion and obviously this is more money than back then. 'Cause Lord of the Rings, they didn't know if they were even gonna finish. Like they had no
Yeah.
money. This obviously is made by Lionsgate and someone else, and they have money. Big Chinese company. So they were able to make this. What I'm shocked about, and going into the whole fans versus new people, is I am shocked that this movie made a lot of money.
I was too.
And it made
I
a lot
didn't
of
think
money.
people
It
would be
doubled. Its budget
Yeah.
was like 165, and it made almost 400.
Yeah.
And I was
I was
shocked
surprised,
by
too.
that.
I was too, because I thought a lot of people would think it's too heady or too complicated. I'm not sure. I did not think general audiences were going to be interested in seeing this
It's
movie.
not a
I'll
general
say
audience
that.
kind of movie.
Not really. Not really. I mean,
But then
I
again,
think
Lord
it
of the
has enough
Rings,
there.
Lord of the Rings wasn't either,
Yeah, and then
and
it
that
kind
was
of
a billion
created
dollar
new.
franchise.
Yeah, it sort of created a new avenue for general audiences, and it sort of redefined what general audience is. And I think this movie's kind of doing the same thing because, like we just pointed out, or like you just pointed out, a lot of people went to go see this movie that normally wouldn't. And I think I, this is kind of more the politics around the release of this film. It got delayed many times. It was, obviously the pandemic was a huge factor in that. They toyed around with the idea of releasing it direct to streaming. Denis Villeneuve,
That would
said
have been a
very
crime.
passionately. He's
That would
like,
have been a
this needs to
crime.
be, this needs to be in a theater. It's made to be in a theater. This is such a theatrical film. It needs to be in a theater, which he's right. But also, you understand the position the studio is in. No one was really right or wrong. It's just kind of a rock and a hard place. But he did win out, and I think because of the movie getting delayed, it added some intrigue because there really wasn't a lot in theaters at that time. Or before
I think
that,
it got
added
very
some
lucky
intrigue.
because I want to check
I think
out
so too.
its original release date. I'm fairly certain its original release date was near some giant colossal movie. I can't remember what it was, but I'm hold on. So Dune was originally supposed to come out. Okay. Let me look at release. So Dune was originally scheduled to be released in November 2020. November 2020 movie releases. I think something big came out then,
Interesting.
or was
I don't
supposed to
remember.
come out big.
Yeah, yeah.
Plus, obviously, pandemic. November 2020 was not a time people were going to the theaters.
No. I mean, it basically got delayed an entire year, which I think was for the best.
Oh, I remember what it was. It was supposed to come out in October, at the same time as James Bond, and they delayed it
Oh yeah, yeah,
because that movie was
yeah.
big.
Those, yeah, they might have cannibalized each other a little bit for sure. Yeah, I think the pandemic, the delay, actually kind of ended up being a blessing. To be honest,
I think so. Yeah, because there's nothing else.
I
out
don't think
besides
people would
Dune.
have been. One, they wouldn't have tried to release it in November at that point. No one would have. But let's say they did. No one would have gone to seen it because of
No.
that window. So surely they recognize we can't release this film now. We have to delay it, which was the right call. And I think also it was released at a point where most people were vaccinated and comfortable going to the theaters again, so that
Yes.
helped it. And people were kind of itching to go to the theaters
People
again,
were
myself
really
included.
wanted to get out of the house and see movies again.
Yep.
And all the
And I think-
advertisements are like, this is the movie that you got to come back to theaters for. This is the big
yeah,
screen movie.
it's,
And that
it's a
advertising,
spectacle.
that advertising was brilliant.
Yeah,
Absolutely
I
brilliant
agree.
advertising.
Well, it was and that kind of surprised me too. I didn't know how this film would be marketed. I didn't know if they would try to, draw in the Star Wars crowd, if they would try to,
They somehow
appeal more to
went.
general
They went their
audiences.
own way, and it worked somehow.
Yeah, they didn't go in that direction at all. The trailers are not. I wouldn't say they're action heavy or
The trailers are very
driving.
weird. Like
Yeah, they are.
they
They're
have
a
the
little
the
bit
music, and it's
ambiguous.
just like they didn't even try to be like. It didn't even say like the new Star Wars. It was just like, nah, this is Dune.
Yeah,
Like,
it's
go
very
watch
much
it.
its own thing. It's very much its own thing, and I like that. I liked that they weren't trying to capitalize off that audience. I don't think that really would have worked. But when I was bringing up Star Wars earlier, I wasn't necessarily comparing this to Star Wars, but I would say that this was this is like kind of the direction I wish Star Wars was going. I do wish they would attach directors with like a very clear vision, someone who is really
Yeah,
passionate about the source material, and I wish that they would. I guess this is a way to adapt source material in a way that Star Wars has not been able to achieve, in my opinion. And it's disappointing to see a movie like Dune, which is a modern sci-fi epic, and then Star Wars is very beloved to me personally, and then to compare, which maybe it's an unfair comparison, but then to compare the recent Star Wars films and just kind of think, oh, what could have been, if people just cared a little bit more about this. And I think sci-fi going forward, I'm more interested to see films like Dune and less interested to see films like Star Wars, which is surprising to me because that's not what I expected. So that's kind of why I brought up the Star Wars franchise earlier, because I think Dune is sort of an avenue for sci-fi to take a new
I
interesting
agree.
turn. And I think Star Wars is. I mean, I think people are getting burned out on it. I mean, I am. I'm a big fan and hated the sequels, uh, in retrospect at least. And then Mandalorian's pretty good. Boba Fett's pretty good, but they still are like so reliant on like pre-established characters and
Mhm.
iconography. They're not going in like a unique, interesting direction. The Dune was obviously not really relying on like a pre-established property. Like, sure, Dune was somewhat relevant in like the
Not in the
cultural
film
zeitgeist, but
industry, like you had the
yeah,
miniseries on Sci-Fi years ago, which was pretty okay,
yeah,
and then David Lynch's Dune, and that's about it.
yeah. There wasn't like this big, like I said, cultural zeitgeist around it the way that
Yeah,
there is with Star Wars, but yet it performed really well. And yeah, so I think it sets a bar for sci-fi going forward, especially sci-fi on a grander scale. And I think it sets a new benchmark, which is, I think, kind of a feat just in and of itself.
yeah, it really did. Like this movie is a tentpole film that will be talked about way later from now, as that kind of Lord of the Rings, Blade Runner, like those tentpole movies, genre films.
Yeah,
Um, and I think when it's done as a trilogy, and hopefully that trilogy is really good, I think it will be talked about like the Lord of the Rings as that quintessential trilogy.
I hope so.
But we'll
I
have to
hope the
see.
studio doesn't fuck it up.
Uh,
I don't think Denis Villeneuve will fuck it up, but I think the studio might fuck.
yeah,
I don't have a lot of faith in them, but we'll see.
they
We'll
let
see.
him do
I'm going
this
to be
one,
optimistic.
so
Yeah, they let him do this one, and it made money. So
and it made money. So hopefully the next one they'll be like, you just do it again.
we should probably talk about some of the things that we disliked or some of the lesser elements to the film. We talked about how we had a hard time kind of latching onto the characters in the first probably third of the film, which I felt the same way. But specifically Paul, and I would say this was a complaint I had throughout the entire movie. I cared so much more about the world around Paul and the events and the characters and the settings around him, but I never found myself caring about him.
I didn't care
I
about him until about midway through. Then I started caring. When it broke off with him and his mother Jessica, I liked him more.
I agree. I agree. When he had to be more self-reliant and kind
Yes,
of
because he's just kind
self-sufficient,
of
yeah,
thrown around at the beginning. He's just kind of a side character, pretty much. When he's on his own protecting his mom, I'd like him a lot more.
I agree. Yeah, that's definitely true. That's the point that he started to win me over a little bit more. But and maybe that's the point is that he's I wouldn't say he's a spoiled brat, but he is a little bit of a spoiled brat. You
In
know,
in the
he's not like
book,
a
Paul is a little puke. Like he's just a kind of scrawny little. You know, it is. He's part of a bigger story,
yeah,
and
yeah.
I won't get into what happens because that'll spoil the movies for you because they've been accurate so far. But yeah, he's kind of a little puke, and it is a rise for him, but also dealing with some heavy stuff that I won't get into because I don't want to spoil. But it is very much how he.
I know about some. I know about some of that, but I won't get into it either.
It's how he reacts to the world around him.
Yeah, and I think maybe the way that this movie was presented is that maybe he's a little bit more of like a vessel for the story and a vessel for the audience, and that him being likable or relatable is not necessarily super important in this film, though it would be nice, but it's not really like essential for the story. If that makes any sense.
Yeah. What'd you think of Timothy Chalamet's performance?
Nah. I think he was the weakest part of the movie, if I'm being honest.
He's Timothy Chalamet. I've never liked Timothy Chalamet. I think this is his best performance. But
Yeah,
he's
but
fine.
that's not saying a lot. I don't think he's bad, but he's very wooden in everything. He's very wooden in everything, and he's very wooden in this. And sometimes being wooden in the film worked because it's sort of like this stoic, sort of noble family, and sometimes that's very, in character. But then there's other times where I wanted him to be a little bit more human, just humanize the character a little bit more, and he doesn't really capture that.
I can agree that he, acting wise, is probably the weakest of the cast.
Yeah, but he's not horrible. I mean, he doesn't break the movie.
No, he's not bad, but
we're still gushing over it.
He's no Oscar Isaac. He's no Rebecca
no.
Ferguson. He's no even Zendaya is really good. He's no even Jason Momoa, who's usually not that great of an actor. I love him in this movie.
He was my favorite character in the movie.
He is such a perfect casting based on that character from the book. It is perfect. And I'm looking at you, all the people online who are mad that they cast a Hawaiian guy. The character in the book is described as having brown skin. So, what do you want from me? He has brown skin, and he's described as having brown skin and being very, very attractive and having very lovely hair, I think.
That's Jason Momoa.
Oh, it's Jason Momoa. He's perfect. He's charismatic. He's fun. He's perfect in that role.
Yeah, he was my favorite character in the film, and I think that's why I liked Paul and Timothy Chalamet a little bit less, because I would kind of compare him probably subconsciously to Jason Momoa and Oscar Isaac, and I wanted Timothy Chalamet to bring more of that energy to the character of Paul, like win me over a little.
Or how about that? I can't remember his name. Why am I?
Josh Brolin.
No, who had
He was one of my favorite characters.
One of the best energies in the movie, which was
Give me some hints. Maybe I can help you.
which was Stellan Skarsgård as Baron Harkonnen. He was awesome in this movie.
Oh yeah.
He takes that part and makes it his own. He's so weird and creepy.
There are some parallels to Star Wars, because I know this film, like, probably more on a subconscious level inspired Star Wars. Like, even spice is mentioned in some capacity in Star Wars, but like I know the character of the Emperor was based off of him, like pretty much directly.
Oh yeah, and
stated.
Star Wars is a lot of Dune ripoffs. In fact, in the original script for Star Wars, Luke's name was Paul.
I didn't know that.
Well, he didn't even try to be original.
Yeah, I mean, and it's worth pointing out because it was an influence on Star Wars, but yeah, what a unique kind of weird, like, grotesque villain. Yeah, it was really, really interesting. Like, just
you don't see that level of creativity in big movies anymore, and it's great.
Yeah, I think, like, I guess I'm going to use the term grotesque because it's really the most appropriate. Like, every time he would come up on screen, I would kind of squirm in my
he's
chair a
so
little
gross.
bit. Yeah, but it's why he's perfect,
and it's, I love an example of when you can tell an actor is really, really having fun playing their character. You can tell Skarsgård is having a lot of fun in that movie.
Yeah, it kind of evokes some of that, like, Palpatine energy a little bit, like your precious rebel fleet, like that sort of.
It's hamming it up, but
comic.
He hams it just enough for a Denis Villeneuve film, like not too much, just enough. And yeah, it's great. He's
No, I
great.
agree.
Even Dave Bautista's great. His
Yeah,
character's like
he is
really, his character's creepy too, but in a different way. Like
intimidating.
he's intimidating, and he's like, you can tell that he'll snap at any moment,
Yeah,
and that he's a weird guy.
I think another thing I would have liked a little bit more in the film is I feel like the the Harkonnens are just kind of portrayed as being like the antagonistic force, but you don't really get a lot of insight into their motivations or why people follow them or why there's an allegiance to them. And I get that anytime you have an antagonistic force, there's always gonna be like some degree of like blind allegiance. But I would have liked a little bit more development on them too.
Yeah, I think
I
they
mean,
will do that more in the future films. And for this film, they're really just in a violent militaristic organization.
yeah,
Their whole thing is they just want to own as much as they can.
yeah, very
Um,
gluttonous, which is
and
kind of
I just
tying to the
love
theme of
all
the
the
Emperor.
yes, I love all the visuals for them, all the costume designs, like the throat singing that was kind of mixed with like a vocoder synth almost.
Yeah, that was weird. It was
And it was
very
just
interesting.
cool. You don't see unique artistic stuff like that in movies anymore. You just don't.
The
Not,
sound design in this
oh, the
movie, we
sound
should
design in
we
this
should
movie is
touch on
amazing.
that. It's maybe the best sound design I've ever heard in any film whatsoever.
It's very good.
It doesn't fall because there's like the typical sci-fi like trappings when it comes to sound design, and it's
Mhm.
very hard to not fall into those pitfalls. But this movie doesn't. All the sounds of the ships and the weapons and the world itself, the score, everything is very unique to this film. It doesn't feel like it's recycled or borrowed from other films. It doesn't feel like it's a homage to really other
It's its own thing,
sci-fi properties. It's very much its own thing, which is not an easy thing to do in this day and
and
age,
you don't
especially
see
with
it again. We're not trying to be cynical, but like the industry is going a more what's the word? Not coagulated, but
well, I mean, kind of consolidated.
yeah. Like,
Very
I mean,
safe.
you still have those weird movies now, once in a while, but for the most part, the blockbusters are all the same. They're very Marvel formula, and they're good. There's good movies, but you don't see $200 million movies doing stuff like this anymore, and it's great. Like, it's great
Yeah,
to see vision. It's great to see, unique artistic stuff.
I think I think it's kind of an encouraging film, and
It's
like we said,
encouraging
the
for
fact that
studios
yeah, the people
because
that
it
people
doubled its
responded so
budget
well
in
to it.
money. So
Yeah, and that not only did people respond so positively to it, but that they actually managed to pull it off is because it was considered to be unadaptable, supposedly.
well, again,
And
you know
we'll
what?
see how
That's
the
what.
other films
Well, we'll see.
proceed.
Yeah, but I mean, that's
But
what they said about Lord of the Rings.
there you go.
They said that book is unfilmable. At the time, they were right. It took the right person, and I think Denis Villeneuve is this Peter Jackson. He's the right
Yeah,
person for the job, and he has a team of people who are passionate about it, and they'll take all the budget, every cent of it, and they're gonna make it work. And they're gonna make a movie that's filled with passion, and because of that, it's good because it's made by people who know what they're doing, and love what they're doing as well.
on a slightly different topic, I would like to see him do something smaller in scale going forward as a director. I think there was some rumor about him doing like a horror film, like a sci-fi horror film.
That might be fun. Have you seen his film Enemy?
No, I've heard very good things about
You
it
should watch
though.
Enemy. That's exactly what you want. It's a smaller,
Oh, yeah,
creepier movie.
yeah. I want to see him scale it back because, I mean, this is awesome. But
Well, did
you
you
know,
did you see Prisoners as well?
no, that's another one. I need
Prisoners
to.
is great.
I have a backlog of Denis Villeneuve stuff I need to watch because everything I've watched by him I've loved. So it's like now I need to kind of dig into
Yeah, I
his
don't know if he
catalog.
I don't know if he has anything bad. Even like Prisoners, which is probably his weakest film, is a good movie. So I don't know.
I think the first film I saw by him was Arrival,
Oh,
and
that one's great.
great movie. Very. I don't know if I would say. I'm trying to think of how I want to phrase it. I guess I'm going to use the term accessible again. It's a very accessible sci-fi movie, in that it's like a very it's at its core a pretty simple premise, and I think he's able to make a product that appeals to a general audience, but he's also able to inject elements of like philosophical elements and more esoteric, kind of weird, trippy elements, and he's able to balance it all in a way that just works, and it's pretty masterful. And then you add his sort of his visual flair and the team that he assembles to work on these films. I mean, he's kind of a master at the craft.
Hmm.
And yeah, I know we keep gushing over this film. I'm trying to think of
He
like
might. I mean,
something
he
like
might be the
juicy we
best.
can argue about, but
He might be
I
the
can't
best
think of anything.
filmmaker working right now.
I think he is. I mean, just based on what I've seen, and I've not even seen his entire catalog, I think he's definitely one of the best. I think anyone could make an argument for that for sure. I mean, being able to tackle something that was considered largely unadaptable and it not falling flat on its face is probably a testament to his skills as a director. And I'm definitely going to be following him more going forward. And I definitely want to dig into his previous films after seeing, Dune. So I'm trying to think if there's anything like
bad to
juicy we can
say? I
argue
mean,
about. Yeah.
I don't think there's anything we could argue about. There is one thing that I'm not sure how I feel about.
What is that?
I mostly like it because I think it was fine, but at the same time, I know it could have been better, and that is the ending of the movie.
I agree. I
I
actually
think
agree.
on paper it's perfectly fine. I just think he maybe could have shot it better or edited out a little bit of stuff.
There's a lot of false endings. There's a lot of points where it feels
Yes,
like the movie's about the end and then it doesn't.
If you just took out the false endings, I think the ending we got is fine. It's a perfectly fine ending.
It drags a little bit at the end, and that's actually a complaint I have too. Is because I was watching the theater and I was really enjoying it and I was really engaged, but like I kept feeling like it was about to end and then it didn't. And then I felt like it was about to end and then it didn't, and I was like, all right, this is kind of. But I get because it's a balance because you want to be able to explain the story and give it enough time to breathe. So it's tricky. You don't want to make it too long, but you don't want to make it too short because then everything's truncated.
Like
So
I said, I think what we got is
long.
perfectly fine.
Yeah.
But I know it could have been better, but it's acceptable. That's why I said it's not really a negative. It's just I know it could have been a little bit better.
I think narratively the ending is really good because it's very what's going to happen now that they've sort of assimilated with the Fremen. I think
and it
that
gives
open-endedness
Paul
is really effective.
It gives Paul a full character arc for the film where it ends with him.
Exactly.
Spoiler. This is a spoiler channel. Whatever. It ends with him, killing his first person. So you get a full arc. It's a full movie's worth of arc. I think the false endings could have maybe been just edited out somehow, or just changed the way it was shot, maybe the music, and then I think it would just be fine. Like it's a very tiny little very tiny.
It would like crescendo to a point where I was like, oh, it's about to end, and then it wouldn't. Yeah, that was almost like a weird editing scoring thing too.
Like I said, it's barely a negative. It's just it could have been done just a little bit better. A little bit.
Yeah. It didn't ruin the film, but yeah, I agree. I have the same complaint. I think we pretty much have all the same complaints about this film. I think
there's not much negative to say. It's a very good movie.
No, and then even the things that are negative are not movie breaking, and I don't even think they really bump down the overall experience. Even collectively.
The only negative things are us struggling to like pick a negative. It's like
yeah.
Like all right, maybe this that's kind of negative.
I do worry that going forward, the subsequent films might not be on the same threshold of quality, and so maybe our expectations will be too high. I don't know, but that's not really.
I'm hoping it's like again. I'm hoping it's like Lord of the Rings, where they get better with each one. Yeah. I mean, I think I remember when Fellowship came out, everyone said it was a masterpiece, and then Two Towers came out, and everybody was like, "Wow, that was even better." I think it's gonna be like that, where we think to ourselves, "I don't know if we can top the first one," and then it does in every way. Because I love Fellowship, and Fellowship's the weakest of the three movies.
Yeah, I would agree.
I'm hoping we get that, but at the same time, I know it's unwise to overhype a film, so I'm trying not to.
I'm excited, but I want to keep my expectations in check at the same time.
Very, very, very difficult, but I'm trying.
Yeah, I think going forward, if I did have some critiques for what the next films need to do, I think I want a little bit more development on the villains. I want to understand their motivations more. I want to understand their sect more. I want to understand why people follow them, why they have an allegiance to this, the Harkonnens. I I want Paul to become at least a little bit more likable, or at least a little bit more humanized. I want to be able to sort of care about him more, essentially. And same goes for his mother. I think they did a better job as the film went along, especially by
Mhm.
the end, making them actually somewhat, compelling. But I want to see them expanded upon in a way to where I'm actually kind of rooting for them, or I'm actually invested in them as characters. I I want to see. I just want to see the film kind of dive, like you said, more into the mystique of spice. Kind of explain a little bit more what it
Oh,
is. They
it.
do kind of
I, w-
explain that it's
I
oil.
won't spoil anything, but they will because
Yeah,
they have to because of the plot. Like it's very much part of the
that's
plot, so it's
yeah.
gonna come
So
up.
I'm interested for that.
How do you feel about them doing the companion TV show?
I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah, they're doing a companion TV show on HBO Max. I know Denis Villeneuve is going to direct at least one episode, but
Hmm.
it's going to be about the Bene Gesserit. I think it takes place before or during. I don't remember, but
The Gesserets like that weird sect of witches. Is that right?
yeah,
Yeah.
they're trying to
Eh.
breed and create the. You'll get into the next movie, but
It feels unnecessary for me, but then
I
again,
agree. But I
if
hope
I
it's
was a fan of the
good.
source material, maybe I'd be really interested to see it. But yeah, on paper, I'm not really that compelled to watch it. Just when you described it, when you mentioned it, I was kind of like, I don't know. I don't really want a
It
Dune
supposedly
TV
is going
show.
to be a prequel based on one of the prequel novels by Brian K. Herbert, Frank Herbert's son, and I
Hmm.
don't like his books. So
I've heard that before. I've heard people say that. How many did
I'm
did the original author write?
so the original Dune like saga. I know it's you have Dune, Dune Messiah, Children of Dune. Um,
Aren't there six or something?
it's a I remember it being a odd number. So it's Dune, Dune Messiah, Children of Dune, God Emperor of Doom, Heretics of Dune, Chapter House Dune. So it's six.
Okay.
I've
And
only
did he write
read
all of them?
yeah. I've only read the first one in part of the second one. I remember just not liking it. I'm really glad that Denis Villeneuve is just doing the original novel because Dune gets weird after the first book, and not in a good way. I think it gets overcomplicated.
I
And
see.
if the original's unfilmable, you ain't making a movie out of the other books because they get
So he's
weird.
it's this first book will be a trilogy, and then who knows what they'll do going forward. Is
I
that
don't think they're
essentially
gonna do
the
the
game
rest.
plan?
In fact, I thought I saw an interview with Denis Villeneuve saying that he only wanted to do the original.
I've heard people say the same thing about the the latter books, and I've heard that they, like you said, they get very weird and not in a good way. Maybe just as the author was getting old. I don't know.
Also,
Who
the
knows?
thing is, the final book ends in a cliffhanger, and then he died, so it's not finished.
Yeah,
So
I've heard that. I've heard that.
you're better off just not doing any of those.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it seems like the core of the story is really kind of encapsulated in the first book based on what I've kind of read and what I've heard. So I'm glad that they're just kind of sticking to that. And I guess if it's uber successful, that they're going to try to adapt them going forward. Like it's a cash cow, they're going to try to milk it.
But we already have a potential
But
TV series based on the prequel books, so
yeah, yeah, I'm not too interested in that. I'm not gonna lie. So that's you asked me how I feel about it. I guess that's how I feel. It doesn't
yeah,
draw me in.
I'm much more interested in a trilogy. Just
Yeah.
the main novel, the original, the rest. I'll watch it, but I won't really care.
Yeah, I might not even watch it to be honest. We'll see. We'll see if it comes out and I hear good things. I'll give it a chance.
I
But
mean, like I said, the first episode is going to be directed by him, so I'll at least watch that.
well, yeah, and that's at least a promising start. And yeah, I guess there's just I'm curious and intrigued and excited to see where this franchise is going.
Mhm.
Headed into the future, and can't say that a lot for for a lot of other franchises that are
No,
out right
well,
now.
like we said earlier, I mean, I said earlier, I don't give a crap about Star Wars anymore. So
Yeah, I'm getting to the point where I'm a little bit burned out on
I
Star
still
Wars.
care about
And
Marvel. Um, but not as much as I did during the Infinity
Yeah,
Saga. So
and I'm getting a little bit of Marvel fatigue too. I mean, they weren't going to take a break because it's a cash cow and they're going to
you
milk
can't
it.
take a
But
break on that. Like,
yeah,
there's so much money.
but yeah. So we'll see. We'll see. There's like a glimmer of hope for the Dune franchise, and I think that's part of why I'm so intrigued. Whereas
So
everything
for
else
you,
seems like
because
it's
you're not the book guy. For you, it's a whole new
yeah,
IP to
yeah,
get into,
exactly,
a whole new IP to be excited about. So,
exactly.
and that's what's also really great about it is all these new people are now Dune fans, and they can be excited about the next part, just like I'm excited about the next part, and now they're part of the club, so to speak.
I'll be curious to see what else is kind of brought out of the woodwork in light of Dune being successful. If there's other sci-fi properties or fantasy
I mean,
properties that
Amazon's doing Wheel of Time, so that's huge.
I don't know much about that.
HBO and BBC have been doing His Dark Materials, which is a great book trilogy, and the show is fantastic. It's really good, and that'll be ending soon. I think the final season comes out soon.
Okay.
They're doing a season for each book, and it's been great. And then, yeah, who knows what they'll adapt? Maybe they'll adapt some. Well, they tried doing a Fahrenheit 451 movie, and it was terrible.
Yeah, that's a shame because that could be a really good one.
That's a
Denis
great
Villeneuve
book.
would actually do a great job at that
Hey,
too.
what? Just give them everything.
I mean, for real. I mean, I wish they would give him a Star Wars project. They won't, or he probably won't want to do it even
I
if
don't
they
think
did.
he'll want
but-
to. I don't think he's interested.
No, I think they'd have to give him a level of creative freedom that they're not willing to give.
I don't think he wants
think-
to do an IP that big. I swear I saw an interview where he said he's not interested in Star Wars just because
Yeah,
he's not interested in big IPs.
yeah, and I don't blame him. I don't blame him. But yeah, do we have really anything else to say about the movie going?
No, I mean, usually at the end of our episodes we say whether or not we recommend a film, and clearly
Yeah.
we recommend Dune.
yeah, clearly we would recommend this film. I would go a step further. I
Is
if
it
they do
must
some
watch
other
cinema?
yeah, but I would also say if they do some kind of theatrical release again in the future as part of a promotion, go and see it
I
in a
hope
theater.
so. Yeah.
And because I saw it in a theater and it really blew me away. It was one of the kind of most immersive theatrical experiences I've ever had.
It's when it
And-
comes to like theater experiences, it's up there with like the likes of like Inception. Like I remember
Oh yeah,
I saw Inception when it came out, and then every time I watched it on Blu-ray, I loved it. But they did it during COVID. They did a 10-year anniversary theatrical release, and I went and saw it. And I was like, "Oh right, this movie's amazing."
yeah. That's how all of Nolan's films are. You know, in the theaters where they really shine, and then at home, it's hard to capture the same scale.
I think the Batman movies work,
Literally,
but
yeah, they do. But
stuff
those
like
movies-
Inception and Interstellar, those are the theatrical movies.
Hans Zimmer's scores were just made for a theater. Like it's
Yeah.
made to feel like the rumble of the subs built into the ceiling. You know, in an Atmos theater, it's just it's
yeah.
made for that.
Dune
until-
soundtrack and Atmos was amazing. The drums, dude.
You know, in 20 years when home theater technology has evolved to a point where we can like match what we're experiencing in an actual theater, yeah, but like in the short term, like some movies, like they just have to be seen in a theater.
Well,
And-
my idiot friend who saw Dune, he didn't like it. I'm like, "How'd you watch it?" He said,
Oh.
"I watched it at home on my TV with TV speakers." And I was like, "What is wrong with you?" I was like, "Dude, you watched
Yeah.
it wrong."
Yeah, I usually don't like that argument, but in this case, yeah, I would agree that you need to see this film in a theater to get the full impact. And so I can see why he was so passionate about not doing a direct to streaming release. I mean, yeah, I'm kind of interested to see the precedent that it sets for releases going forward, theatrical versus
Maybe studios
versus
will take some
streaming.
more chances on sci-fi and fantasy, and even drama that is a little bit more unique.
Yeah, I think so too. Well, do we have any concluding thoughts or anything else we
No,
want
I
to bring
think
up?
we've- I think we've milked
pretty
this
much
cow
covered everything
dry.
we can. Yeah, I think so too.
I guess we'll just wrap things up. I mean, where
Yeah.
can the good people find you? Plug your stuff.
People can find me at Daddy D Rock on YouTube. They can also find me on Twitter at the Daddy D Rock. And yeah, I've got a video coming up, I think about NFTs. I'm going to
Oh,
talk
do
about
you now?
NFTs. Yeah,
You'll have to
and
send me that one.
I'm it's in the works. I don't know how people are going to respond to it. It might be a controversial video, but that's okay.
Is it? Do you share my thoughts on NFTs?
What are your thoughts on NFTs?
I think they're a giant scam.
Yeah, that's the premise of the video.
All right, I'll like the video then.
But
All right.
I do talk about some of the pros of NFTs
All
because
right.
there are some pros. So I kind of play devil's advocate a little bit.
Okay, I look forward to this. I
What
shall.
about you?
I shall. Well, you can find me here on my channel on Twitch. I
Yep,
stream
yep.
Tuesdays, Fridays, Sundays. Fridays I usually do Sea of Thieves, sometimes some Halo, sometimes some Smash, but usually Sea of Thieves. I'm primarily a Sea of Thieves and Destiny streamer. And then you can find me on YouTube. My links are on the Twitch thing. I'm not gonna spell it out for you, but you can check out our show on our official YouTube. The link is in our Twitch. Make sure to check that out. I'm gonna be uploading some extra clips onto that as well from some discussions that didn't air. We did a 2021 year in review that I'm gonna put up this week, right after this episode probably. And that's about it. Twitter
Okay.
at the Bone Shackles. If you ever need news on the stream, if we have a technical issue where we have to reschedule, make sure to follow me there because that's where I'm gonna let you know about it. And that's all
And
she
I'll
wrote.
share stuff on,
Oh, yeah,
on
go
my
ahead.
account too. I want to say next episode I want a brief aside between us on Sony acquiring Bungie because I'm sure you have a lot of thoughts about it, and I'd be curious to. We'll save it for another time. That's a.
We'll save it.
But
We're not a
I do wanna
gaming
talk about
show, so we're not gonna.
But I want to talk about it. I want
Alright,
to talk
alright.
about it.
We
Well,
will.
because it might tie into film and TV. Because
It
Sony.
might.
So that's why I want to talk about it.
It's the worst studio to buy Bungie when it comes to movies.
Oh, it is.
Have you seen
it is.
Sony movies?
Sony's film studios almost went bankrupt. There's been talks of
They're
them
terrible.
getting
Their
bought
movies
out.
are so
Yeah.
bad.
Yeah, so
except
we
for
gotta
one
talk about
movie.
it next time.
They've got one good movie. That's Into the Spider-Verse. All right.
That movie's amazing.
All right, ladies and gentlemen. We shall see you next Tuesday at 8 p.m. every Tuesday. Be here, be a square. Peace.